So I have my audio recorded. Are you garage banding it?
I have my audio.
Okay, I have my audio too.
Okay. That doesn't make YouTube any better. But I have my audio.
Okay.
Great.
Well.
Okay, so if you're watching this on YouTube, welcome. And we're talking about language lessons.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Somehow two of us both forgot to put.
I actually thought I was until you said it, and I moved my mouse, and it wasn't taking. So, anyways,
Okay.
So I lived for those. Like we were, no kids. We would go out dancing at night and crawl home at 3:30 in the morning, and I'd roll out of bed at 8 o'clock and go sit at her table. I loved it. And from there, then I met younger French people in the Chicago area because this was an older couple, and like I'm still friends with them to this day. And then, like 20 years ago, I took around a 6-week course at the Alliance Française. Like I've always just farted around with it. I've never, like, I didn't even know until I started with Julien that there was like A1, A2, B1, B2. I didn't even know the levels of fluency. So I just feel like in the last year or 18 months or so that it's more real and I'm actually making progress. I just think he's the best teacher. It's been just such a great experience. I actually sort of like brought him on board with Parisian Farm Girl. I'm just going to give him a plug. If you would like to take French lessons with Julien, you can email him at frenchwithjulien@parisianfarmgirl.com. And he's very affordable.
I thought he stopped doing lessons.
No.
Okay.
So, yeah, I want him to sort of be a part of the Paris with Angela thing. He's just a great teacher. And when I get done with a lesson, sometimes I feel so foolish but I've learned something and I just figure that's gotta be good for me. That's gotta be good. I just enjoy it. And it just fascinates me how much, it's kind of like the more you learn, the more you realize what you don't know.
Absolutely.
Which is amazing. Like, how can I have a conversation and still not know so much?
Yeah. I don't know. I leave lessons sometimes and I'm like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to get it. And then other times I'm like, just give up.
Joel will see the look on my face when I come downstairs. Yep. He's like, it didn't go good. I'm like, no, yep. I'm an idiot. It didn't go good.
Yep.
Or sometimes I'm like, it's happening. I'm getting
it. Totally. Well, and the interesting thing about language too is it really does matter who you're speaking to. Because I can hear people and I'm like, look, I'm bloody nailing, trying to grab onto a verb I know.
Right.
And I don't know how it works in French, but in Italian, you don't use the words they, he, she. You conjugate the verb. So you hear the verb first and then you hear the ending, which is how you know who they're talking about. Okay. So you got to grab onto a verb with your bloody claws as they're speaking really rapidly. And then you got to go to the ending and, okay, now who are we talking about?
So there's no pronoun before the verb?
They're not used. And unless you're really trying to specify, like, I already cleaned the house today. You wouldn't say it.
See, in French, there's a pronoun and they have the ending at the end of the verb, but they don't say it.
Well, I don't know what's harder there.
You just have to know how to spell it because it's there. It's a mystery, but you don't say it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. To me, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's just an absolute jigsaw puzzle. And like, we think more linearly in English, right? Like I went, where did you go? To the store to buy. I mean, in Italian, it's much more poppy back and forth. Like I give the book. I don't give you the book.
Yeah.
You give the ending is the book. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I think it's fun. I think it's humbling. And when I went to I grew up in just standard American town. Granted, like I've said before, we had tons of Spanish speaking people here. And so I was exposed to that, but like that's it. That is the only other language that exists here in our little town. Okay. So when I went through France and Italy and Spain when I was younger, I guess I was 20 when I did this. I just remember thinking, I'm like, you land in Paris. I mean, like, flew from Seattle, landed in Paris and Charles de Gaulle for the first time.
Yeah.
And you step out in Paris and you're like, I'm sorry, what is happening here? And it
Yeah.
just so happens that we got a unique opportunity to experience Paris because the metro was down on a strike, the buses were down on a strike, and we couldn't afford a taxi. That was out of the question.
Yeah.
And kids, this is before cell phones, Google Maps, Uber,
Uber,
non-existent.
right?
So you got a calling card and some traveler's checks, and you're in
Oh,
Paris.
traveler's checks. Bless your
Good
heart.
luck.
We're so
Good
old.
luck.
Traveler's checks.
And I just remember walking around the streets of Paris and I had multiple thoughts. One, people smoke here a lot. Two, it all smells like pee. Three, there are so many diverse people here.
Yeah.
And you don't just hear French when you're in Paris, you hear everything. And
Yeah.
all the different neighborhoods and different groups of people. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, so the world is so much bigger than me.
Yeah.
And that's hard for, I think, granted, in the big cities, of course, you get different languages, New York or Chicago or these kinds of
Yeah,
things.
because in my Chicago high school, like my Michigan high school, no. But in my Chicago high school, that was my first experience walking down the halls on my first day. I was like, oh my goodness, there are so many languages happening in this hallway right now.
Yeah. That's
It was
just,
shocking.
that blows my
Yeah.
mind. I mean, I think it's so neat, but for most of America, that's not the experience that they
Mhm.
have.
Mhm.
And I think, you know, it's easy to kind of feel ashamed, maybe, like, oh, I only speak one language. But I've explained this to my photography mentors before. I'm like, you guys, imagine that all of Europe plus is one country.
Right.
You don't need a passport to go back and forth. You just drive. They're all
Mhm.
connected by drivable roads. Everybody has a car and they all speak English. Would you have a passport? Would you speak multiple languages?
Right.
You know, I could drive for days and days and days and days and days and people would still be speaking English. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I do like that learning language or learning a musical instrument, you are activating this piece of your brain that's just, it's pleasurable. It's fun to try it.
Mhm.
It's fun to be bad at something. It's fun to know I'm going to be a student of this for my whole life,
Yeah.
like a gardener.
Mhm.
It's forever a language.
Yeah. And I think the key with any of those things is sticking with it enough so you get a few wins.
Yeah.
So that you have some sense of the potential of what could be.
And most people don't.
Yeah, I imagine.
Most people don't. I mean, think about even with instruments, like how many people want to learn to play an instrument, and then how many people actually play it actively to a point of competency.
Yeah.
But you're right, you never get the wins. This is what I told my kids with jujitsu. Because, you know, excitement about anything ebbs and flows.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes they leave a lesson and they're like, yeah, I killed it today. And other times they leave a lesson, they're like, I didn't win any of my matches. Like, this is pointless. I'm never going to get good at it. And so we've had to have the conversation many times about, like, you have to stick with things to see the reward from them. Otherwise, it's all just going to be failings. And you're right, that's not fun. But it's either going to force you to quit or it's going to spur you on to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, there is that moment of like giddy. I see it on my trips with my ladies. Like even if I like at the flea market, I'll teach them a few handy expressions for the flea market in case I'm at a different booth or whatever. And they're like, I did it. He understood what I was saying. Like we ended up in English, but like it worked for a second, you know, like I'm like, yes, it worked for a second. I'm so happy for you. It does work. You can do it.
That reminds me of that really hilarious reel that I sent you of the American guy walking down the streets in Paris, and he passes these two girls. I'm going to butcher this. Once my Italian tongue kicks in, my French tongue goes away.
Over.
It's completely over. And so he's like, bonjour. And they're like, huh? He's like, bonjour. And they're like, what? He's like, bonjour. And they're like, oh, bonjour. And he's like, he walks away and his face is just like, what just happened? if you say to it like an English, if you say like hello, like we know what you're
We
saying.
kind of know what you're saying. We're not trying to be difficult about it. It's true. Sometimes
so
I'm like,
funny.
you guys are just being difficult. Okay, we get it. You're better than us. We get it. The reels about French make me laugh. One with the guy where he's dressed and they can tell he's an American because he's got on like buffalo plaid and jeans, and he's like, we're not that different. Like, yes, we are. And like, oh my gosh, it must be part of an ongoing series because you can see there's some callbacks in the reel. But
you know how when you did your blog, when you named it and all that, all those years ago, almost 20 years ago, you had sort of this foresight to know like these are two different parts of my personality.
Yeah.
Like I have these two sides. Now I posted about this on my Instagram because I got a message this week that was like, you're not a real homesteader.
Oh,
because I get my nails done, I import olive oil, and I like traveling to Europe. And I was like, those are made up rules.
Did she name
Those are the
those
reasons.
things?
Yes. Those are made up rules. They don't exist.
Are you the
and I don't
homesteader
care.
police?
I also don't care. But it just bothers me because I think it's okay. And homemakers, hear me now. Like, you're at home, maybe you're changing diapers, maybe you're mopping your floors, maybe you're delighting that you just cleaned out your refrigerator. I don't know. But there also is probably a piece that lives inside of you that loves something else too. Like, maybe you love to go out dancing, get all dressed up and go out dancing with your husband. Maybe you really love to, like, I love to skeet shoot. You know, I get my nails done and I skeet shoot. Okay? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Clay pigeons, shotguns?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love it. It's my favorite thing to do besides gardening. And like, it's okay to be nuanced and it's okay to have these like different parts of your personality where it's like, they don't have,
Shay?
they don't, I mean, I think so. I don't know.
Are you sure you can't be a
I don't
doctor
know.
and enjoy tidying up your house and fluffing the pillows too?
Let me give you an example. I did an Italian lesson earlier this week. And I love getting to talk to my tutors about culture, about tax rates, about like about politics, about food, about all these things. I love it. I love learning the language. This is a place that I love. Okay. I went and saw Twisters with my daughter and our like youth group from church. And there's a scene where they're in Oklahoma and they are tearing through this field in this gigantic Dodge truck. And there's like American flags and country music. And I could have torn apart a house. I mean, I was just like, yeah,
right.
Get it. I was like, in that moment, I actually thought if I was in Europe right now, I would be so homesick. I would be throwing up.
Yeah.
Like that
there is
wide
that part
open
of our culture that I just, it's the farm girl. Duh. It's
the farm piece.
Yeah, right.
And not only that, it's just like,
and I don't even believe in mono agriculture. I just love it though. It's so
but there is that piece. I don't know if we kind of caught the last chopper out of Nam with like our American pride, but like there's that piece of me where it's like, I love this. It's like your family. It's like we're all broken and we're all sinners, but like I love this and I love them. And I'm so grateful that I get to live here. And I'm so grateful for all these things. Like both things can be true at the same time. And when we were in Sicily with Dolores and Drew's Dolores' husband. You guys met Dolores earlier this season on the podcast. If you didn't remember that, go back and listen to that episode. That was fun. But
it was good.
We're staying in this hotel in Salina. And this is towards the end of I think we'd been gone for 2 weeks at this point. I go into their hotel room and Drew's listening to Marcus King, who is like an incredible Southern rock guitar player who we listen to all the time. Like most people don't know Marcus King. We listen to Marcus King all the time. I walked into their room. I hear Marcus King and I was like, like, why are you listening to this? I got so happy. And he was like, I just kind of like, I needed a sound of home.
Hmm.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. Like both things at the same time. Can we be that nuanced?
I'm sorry. I'm so irritated by what you told me. I'm so irritated by that.
There's this weird thing in the homesteading community. There was also a post on Substack that was basically saying the same thing. Like, if you have electricity and your hands aren't like kind of constantly covered in soot from tending to your home fires, and like, you're not a real homesteader. And I was like, what good does that do anybody? To draw arbitrary lines that, by the way, you made up because of your experience in the sand, and say, hey, if you cross that line, and by the way, you're typing this on Substack on a computer made in China, powered by a lithium battery. So maybe let's not
Right.
get on our high horse quite yet.
You're not pressing your own paper.
I just think it's weird how people say, I want to understand you, I want to know you, therefore I need you to stay in this box because that's as big of a person as I can understand.
Mm-hmm.
You either like country music or you like rap music, or you're a city person or you're a country person, like, or you're a homesteader or you get your nails done. Like, none of these things can coexist. Why? Can you learn French and love America? Can you do both of those things?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, that's so weird.
And to me, it's like, even when you think about it in homemaking, that's a real turnoff to homemaking. Like, if I have kids, or if I get married, or if I care about my home, or any of these things, then I can no longer, what?
Whatever, have a career,
Whatever.
pursue my education, care about things outside of my home,
Practice
participate
art.
in my community, practice
Whatever.
my art, whatever. It's that. Well, I think, quite frankly, I think people are really negative. And I'm kind of a negative, jaded person myself. I realize that. But I think it comes from a misery loves company heart. So I'm not saying that like homesteaders with dirty fingernails are miserable, but I do think when somebody sees somebody doing something different, I sadly think there's a threat there. It's a perceived threat. Like, I know, and that's the same like with homemaking. It's easy to be, we have this hot mess culture, idolatry, messy bun, big sweatshirts, yoga pants, and so if someone is perceived as having time for a shower and having time to do their hair and do their nails and still have kids and maintain their home, well, they must not be doing it right. They must not be the real deal. They must not be authentic because, I don't know, maybe they're doing a better job than me, taking care of themselves. I don't know.
Okay. Hold the phone.
Okay.
Hold the phone. We're going to say thank you to our sponsors. And then this is the exact topic I wanted to get to. And the fact that language led to this is just provincial.
Okay. I have no idea
So
where
thank
you want to go with this, but okay.
Remind me of what you said. Thank you to Toops & Co. for sponsoring Homemaker Chic podcast. Visit toopsandco.com and use the code HMC10 for 10% off, because this is simple and luxurious natural skincare that you are going to love. I mentioned this last week. I really want you to go and visit the website if you've never been before. I want you to pull up any of the products and I want you to look at the ingredients that are listed. And then I want you to look at the reviews underneath it. And that will help you to understand the quality of skincare and makeup that we're talking about here. Emily Toops has been running this family business for, I don't know, gosh, over 10 years now.
Yeah.
It all came from this desire and this real problem that she was working through with her daughter of having really severe skin reactions to artificial fragrances and preservatives and all these sort of commercial things that frankly don't do us any favors and do us harm. So Emily just went about formulating her own skincare and her own makeup without the use of synthetic chemicals, without any toxins, no fillers, no artificial colors, no artificial fragrances. We did an hour-long interview with Emily a few years ago. You can go look it up. And she told us about all of the preservatives and chemicals that they are allowed to add into makeup and into skincare. And it's shocking. Her products are all made in the USA, all sustainable, all fair trade, all transparent, ethical sourcing, so clean without any disrupting toxins. So whether you're looking for face soap, tallow bombs, lipsticks, mascaras, blushes, you can visit tubesandcode.com and use the code HMC10 for 10% off.
Wonderful. So speaking of America, if you're somebody that loves US made products, I know buying things that are made in the US, sourced here, is really important to a lot of people. And especially when quality can be right there with that US made product. And so we do invite you to try American Blossom Linens. You can visit them at americanblossomlinens.com. And I want you to remember this because it's just for a few more weeks. Summer Chic 20 for 20% off your purchase. American Blossom and their sort of parent company that was been making hotel sheets for five-star hotels for 125 years. American Blossom is their domestic line, and everything they bring you for your linen closet, from baby sheets to beautiful cotton herringbone heavy blankets. I know we don't want to talk pumpkin spice, but heavy blanket season is around the corner. They're all made in the U.S., from the cotton that's grown to the beautiful box that arrives on your doorstep. And what I love is they have a 2-year happiness guarantee. So every bed in our home is dressed in American Blossom sheets. They're woven to last a lifetime. So it's this concept of invest once. And you can do that with the code SummerChic20 for 20% off. The great news is they have a 2-year happiness guarantee. And for those of you like me with king and queen size beds, you get extra pillowcases and a nice, generous fitted sheet. So no more tug of war on new sheets day, which I love. So visit AmericanBlossomLinens.com and use that code SummerChic20 for 20% off. Okay, I took some notes.
Okay, going back to what you were talking about.
I said words like perceived threat, misery loves company. What else?
Okay,
where did
so
we leave off there?
Angela sent me this podcast. You sent me that podcast last week.
Yeah.
And it was talking about that hot mess culture and how that is interpreted as in our culture as I'm doing something right. I'm needed, I'm wanted, I'm valuable, my time is valuable, I'm in high demand.
I think that's when I sent it to you. Because as your friend, sometimes I'm like, do I want to send her this reel? Do I want to blow up her phone? Do I want to tell her, like, here's another show I'm digging or whatever?
Yeah.
And just because you and I have talked specifically, and he used the words we've used about busyness being a badge of honor, I'm like, yep, I'm sending it to her.
Yep. But then it gets even worse because he says, when you react, for example, Angela calls me and I don't call her back. And I say, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Like, I've just been so busy. I have this thing and this thing and this thing. That's actually a method of covering insecurity and failure to basically be a decent person. And we use it because we know it'll get us, it's a get out of jail free card. I'm so busy. I'm homeschooling my kid. I'm so sorry. Like, or maybe they don't even say sorry. Like, I've just been so busy. I'm so tied up doing this. Obviously, can't you see I'm in high demand? Can't you see I'm wanted? Can't you see I'm like achieving things? And he said, actually, you're just covering over a weakness in your personality.
That weakness being what? A lack of ability
time
to
management.
Say no things, time management.
Yeah,
taking on too much.
Sure.
Procrastination.
Sure.
To call your friend back, whatever. Okay. So multifaceted.
Right. And so actually the thing that we use to cover it up because it gets us out of jail free is actually, it's a problem. It's a problem in you. Right?
Then my kids would go, that sounds like a you problem.
That really gutted me. This idea of like, I'm actually insecure about my ability to manage time. And then that comes out manifested in all these kinds of ways. So, of course, I always think, let's apply this to food. I don't plan what's for dinner. My kid comes to me, Mom, what's for dinner? And I lash out. Well, can't you see? I've been really busy. I've had work today. We had to run in for the piano lesson, da 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 da. Like I had to run that load of laundry, and now I don't know what's for dinner. Thanks for asking.
I do that.
Okay,
Okay.
whose fault is that?
Sounds like a you problem.
You
Yeah,
are putting
me problem.
you are putting your lack of ability to say, you know what, I actually need to cancel piano lessons today, or I'll do the laundry after dinner, or whatever. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
1,000
Yeah, yeah,
different
yeah.
scenarios you could
Right.
run, but the idea is like, I didn't manage my time well. I didn't plan ahead. So there's this, quote unquote failing on my part, and now
Mm-hmm.
I'm lashing out at the people who I live with because they're the ones I can lash out on, and they're just the kid wants to eat dinner. Like
Right. Right.
that's not a
It's not an
crazy
offense.
request,
Yeah. Right.
but it's like that's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of your fault. It's not the kid's fault that he wants to eat dinner. It's also not his fault because he's not in charge of the schedule in the same way that you are.
Right. And so his suggestion was do less. Right.
Yes,
I
was
mean,
his
that's what he came in
suggestion.
with then. And it was like, do 80%, but do it 100% ability, 100% effort, but do 80%. And I don't think we live in an 80% culture. I don't think ever anybody is giving an 80% message ever. Until like, I remember where I was on my
No.
walk. I know where I was standing on the road when he said that. I was like, oh my gosh, 80%. He just gave me permission to do 80%. And he just kept going, what's
harder
the point?
than it sounds
what's
like.
The point?
Think about
what's
it.
The point? If you have to put people off and blow people off and you're a hot mess, what is the point? Like, to what avail? Like, why?
The other thing that he said that really floored me, and maybe we just need to do an entire episode on this podcast episode, because I think it's so applicable to homemakers. But the other thing he said that just pulled the rug out for me, like I'm already exposed. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is my fault.
Oh yeah, I felt really exposed.
I'm at fault.
Like, I can't pass this on to anyone else. I make all these decisions for myself.
Yeah. And the homemaker does make those decisions all day, every day. But the other thing he said was essentially, you need a ceiling.
Yes. He said
you need a ceiling.
Yeah, he said you have
homemaker,
no ceiling.
you need a ceiling.
Yeah.
So like I literally wrote down on a little sticky note, I said, did you pay your mortgage this month? Did you have food? Success. Okay. That's a successful month for you. So get on your knees and give thanks, because like this just endless growth, more. And I'm not just talking about work. I mean, homemakers do this all the time. Bigger house, bigger car, promotion at work, higher achievements for our children. I mean, look, we don't have a problem building idols, okay? That is never been mankind's problem. Yeah. So yours are going to maybe look a little bit different than mine, but that just kind of blew me away. It was like, you need a ceiling. You actually need a built-in stopping point. This is like our parent, when we're parenting our children and we say, look, go play in the field, go enjoy the park, go have fun on the monkey bars. Don't go onto the road. Like that's your stop. Full stop.
I used to just, when Aiden was so little, I'm going to cry. I used to take like a big chunky blue chalk and I'd write a mark on the sidewalk. And then I'd walk down and write them. I'm like, this is where you can go back and forth. This is it.
Yeah. And in so many ways, like it's very tender. The Lord has done this for us. He is saying like, you need a ceiling, right? And I think about this a lot with like the Israelites in the desert. So the Israelites are slaves in Egypt. They're taken out. They're wandering in the desert because they just kind of can't get it together. They're just really struggling with this. And the Lord gives them manna. He gives them food, and it comes from the heavens every day, and they gather it up in their baskets and they eat it. When they try to store it, like, oh, I don't know if we're going to have it tomorrow. They try to store it, it molds.
Yeah, we just had this at church last week. Yeah.
And so every day they have to look to the Lord and say, okay, we need our manna, or another way of thinking about it is like your daily bread. We talk about that in the Lord's Prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. It's not bread for a month. It's not bread for a year. It's not bread for 10 years. It's today. I am looking to you. I am relying on you. And I think when we actually, if we were as homemakers to sit down and to write those things out, do I have these things today?
Mm-hmm.
Like there are going to be days where those might not always be true. You know what I mean? And so like people lose their houses.
Mm-hmm.
People lose their spouse. People lose their children. People lose their jobs. Like these are things that what's the word? They're temporal.
Mm-hmm.
And so the days that you do have it, the months or years that you do have it, don't you just want to be like, thank you, Lord?
Mm-hmm.
You know, thank you that my parents are still here and I can still answer my mom's phone call. I have to call you back, Mom. I know. She called me right before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
But do you know what I mean? And then when we don't have that ceiling,
Yeah.
we don't say like, that's sufficient.
Well, okay. I think like one problem is we live in just such an achievement society. Like whether you're in the career world or not, there's like all these markers, right? For achievement. And then also if you are struggling in area like say I think it's really easy to have a but first mentality.
Mm.
I will develop a ceiling. I will create a ceiling. I'll sit down and talk with my spouse about a ceiling once our debt is paid off. Once we get the kids' college fund going. Once whatever proverbial ducks are put in a row. Then I can relax and finally create a ceiling. I think that's probably a really prevalent like way of thought when somebody hears this idea of creating a ceiling. And like that's I mean, because I did that myself in my brain. I just went like, but, you know, but like they're missing the point then.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point is people and quality of life while you have them. Yeah. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
paper's
I mean,
full
to
of.
bring it back to Italy, we just passed
Okay.
Ferragosto, which is the 15th of August, the middle of August, which is like Italians don't work. The joke
Right.
is like, what happens if you need to go to the hospital? And they're like, don't.
Don't. Yeah.
There's not going to be anybody there to help you. This is a time when they go to the sea, they go to the mountains. Everybody in Italy just takes time off to enjoy kind of those little surge of summer. And even before that, you have la dolce far niente, which is like the sweetness of doing nothing. And so my tutor asked me, she said, do you guys, do Americans, you know, take vacations? And I say, yeah, they save up, they take these big fancy vacations and they're enjoyable. The problem is the everyday isn't in order to be able to do that. And so it can, and of course, I'm speaking very broadly here.
Broadly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your home might be different, but I remember during COVID, it was like, let's get some good cheese and let's have our dry farms and let's download some new music, get some really good playlists going. Let's put some patio furniture outside, which we thrifted. And like, we got to we couldn't go anywhere. So it was like, let's create a sweetness here. Let's create a quality of life here today for every day, not just on the half a day we take off a week and not just for that one trip a year.
Right.
But an
and
actual,
the idea was because we don't know what's going to happen. But we still don't know what's going to happen.
But we still don't know what's going to happen. It was maybe a little bit more obvious, but when that idea of a ceiling to me feels really protected in a way because it's not closing you off. It's securing you in and saying, look around you. Look what you have. Look what you've been given today. And look, there are times, and we've gone through these times too, where it's like, there's not a lot. Okay, so if you're listening to this, you might be in one of those times where you're like, but it's not a lot. But, you know, there's always something. It could be water. Do I have water today? I mean, you can take this down to very many basic principles here, but and maybe we just need to do a whole episode on that.
Yeah. You know, the ceiling isn't static either.
Mm-mm.
You can make a ceiling for this season of life, and then you can adjust for the next season of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The way it is isn't always the way it has to be. I mean, I tell myself that all the time. You know, maybe you don't have any capacity right now for learning a language. Maybe you don't care about learning a language. That's fine. That's also fine.
Yeah, right.
But I'm sure you have something and you think, I don't have the time for that now, or I can't do that now, or I don't have many things to give thanks for now. But seasons change, life changes, priorities change, perspectives change, all those things. So
I wrote down, you hem me in.
you hem me in. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, maybe we call it. I know we have a few more minutes that we could go for, but maybe we call it and maybe we can come back to this next week.
Okay.
And we can share like the source of the podcast and the book. I'm actually working through the book right now that's tied into this. So maybe we could kind of revisit some of this and talk about it under the umbrella of stress.
Okay.
Which I think, I mean, hello, homemakers.
Yeah.
I think that could be fun. We do that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I love that. Yeah, it's a great topic. It's a
relevant.
It's flesh outable. That's for sure.
It's super relevant and flesh outable. You two audience, we're so sorry that we forgot to push record for the first 13 minutes.
Yeah. Was it 13?
I don't know how both of us dropped the ball. Sorry. Digital slap on the wrists.
Okay.
Okay, if you want to listen to the first 13 minutes, just go over to wherever you listen to podcasts and it'll be there. Thanks for joining us today, friends, and we'll see you back here next Monday. Have a great week. Cheers.